My parents chose my sister's comfort over my future and forced me to give up my inheritance, so I removed myself from their lives and the aftermath shattered their control. I'm a 26-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, love in my family felt like something you earned by being useful, and invisible at the same time. I didn't have language for it back then. I just knew that when I stayed quiet, helped out, and didn't ask for much, things went smoother. My older sister was always described as sensitive. That was the word my parents used, like it explained everything. She just feels things more deeply, my mom would say, lowering her voice like my sister wasn't in the next room. You're stronger, my dad would tell me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. You can handle more. And I believed them. I learned early that strong didn't mean protected. It meant overlooked. When plans conflicted, mine were the ones that disappeared. If she had a bad day, my feelings could wait. If she wanted something I also wanted, it quietly became hers. I learned how to adjust without being asked, how to shrink my needs before they became a problem. No one told me to do that outright. It was just, understood. Birthdays made it obvious. She got thoughtful gifts, things she'd mentioned once in passing. I got practical stuff. Clothes. School supplies. Things I needed. When she messed up, there were explanations and second chances. When I did, there were lectures about responsibility. Once, when I was maybe 10, I asked my mom why my sister got a new phone while I was still using an old one with a cracked screen. She sighed like I'd disappointed her. You don't need it, she said. You're not like her. I remember nodding, swallowing that feeling in my throat, telling myself that being low maintenance was a good thing. That dependable people were valued more in the long run. That one day, someone would notice how much I gave up without being asked. Back then, I thought this was just how families worked. I didn't know I was being trained to disappear, or that this role would eventually ask for something far bigger than my silence. By the time I was in my teens, I stopped expecting fairness and started planning for escape. Not in a dramatic way, no running away, no big speeches, but in quiet calculations. If no one was going to look out for me, then I had to do it myself. My parents talked a lot about the future. Not emotionally, but financially. Stability. Security. The kind of words that sounded responsible enough to make you trust them. They told me, more than once, that when the time came, things would even out. That what my sister needed now didn't mean I'd lose out later. There will be something for you, my dad said once while we sat at the kitchen table, the smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air. You're the smart one. You plan. You'll be fine. That sentence stuck with me. You'll be fine. It became the excuse for everything. So I worked. I took part-time jobs while my friends were hanging out. I saved money instead of spending it. I chose practical paths over risky ones because I believed there was a safety net waiting at the end, something my parents had promised without ever putting in writing. An inheritance. A foundation. Proof that all the waiting meant something. My sister didn't plan like that. She didn't have to. If she struggled, my parents stepped in. If she failed, they softened the landing. I told myself that was okay, because I was building something more solid. Something earned. Sometimes, late at night, I'd imagine the moment it would finally balance out. I wouldn't need to ask. I wouldn't need to justify myself. I'd just arrive. Independent. Proven. Equal. And whenever doubt crept in, I pushed it away with logic. Families don't lie about things like that. Parents don't build one child's future by quietly borrowing from another's. That would be cruel. Intentional. So I trusted the promise. I built my life around it. I let unfairness slide because I believed it was temporary. I didn't realize that while I was planning for my future, my parents were already rewriting it, without me in the room. The moment everything changed didn't come with yelling or chaos. That's what still messes with me. It arrived quietly, wrapped in concern and calm voices, like something reasonable people were supposed to agree on. My parents called me into the living room one evening. The TV was off, which already felt wrong. My sister was sitting there too, curled into the corner of the couch, eyes red like she'd been crying for hours. I remember thinking, here we go again. My mom started talking first. "She's not doing well," she said softly. "Emotionally. Financially. It's just, a lot right now." My dad nodded along, hands folded, already serious. They explained that my sister had hit another rough patch. Bills, stress, uncertainty about her future. They spoke in vague terms, never quite saying what the problem was, only that it was urgent. Then came the part that made my stomach drop. They told me they needed to adjust things. Just for now. Some money that had been set aside, my portion, though they didn't say it that way, needed to be redirected to keep her stable. Comfortable. Safe. "It's temporary," my dad said quickly, like he knew exactly where my mind was going. "We'll fix it later." I didn't answer right away. I was still processing the fact that this wasn't a request. No one asked how I felt. No one asked if I could afford it or what it would mean for me. They spoke like the decision had already been made and I was just being informed out of courtesy. I finally said, "But that was supposed to be for my future." My mom frowned, not angry, disappointed. "This is her future too," she replied. "And she needs it now. You're strong. You'll recover." My sister kept her eyes on the floor. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say sorry. She just sat there, breathing unevenly, already protected. I felt something twist in my chest. Not just fear, but betrayal. Still, I nodded. Because that's what I'd always done. I told myself it was one sacrifice. One emergency. I didn't realize I just agreed to a rule change that would never be reversed. After that night, every conversation felt heavier, like I was carrying a secret everyone else had already accepted. I tried to revisit it a few days later, telling myself I just needed clarity. That if I explained how anxious it made me, my parents would understand. They didn't. Instead, they shifted into what I now recognize as family values mode. The tone changed from concern to correction. "Why are you keeping score?" my mom asked, arms crossed like I'd insulted her. "This isn't about money," my dad added. "It's about loyalty." Every time I brought up my future, they reframed it as a character flaw. I was being transactional. Cold. Unempathetic. They reminded me, over and over, that my sister was fragile, that life had been harder on her, that pushing her too much could break her. "You don't want that on your conscience, do you?" my mom said once, quietly. I started questioning myself. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe wanting something for myself after all these years meant I wasn't as good as I thought. They praised me for being mature while scolding me for needing reassurance, and somehow both messages landed at the same time. Whenever I pointed out that this wasn't what they'd promised, they denied it gently. "We never said it was guaranteed," my dad insisted. "You misunderstood." That hurt more than the money. Because I remembered those conversations. I remembered building my plans around their words. But arguing felt pointless when they acted so certain and calm, like I was the only one being emotional. My sister started acting different too, lighter. Less stressed. She talked about future plans again, about things she finally felt safe considering. She never mentioned where that safety came from. I, on the other hand, felt myself shrinking. I stopped bringing it up. Every time I opened my mouth, I could already hear the disappointment in their voices. So I swallowed it. Again. They called it family. Responsibility. Love. But deep down, something didn't sit right. If this was really temporary, why did it feel so final? And why did defending my own future make me feel like the villain? I didn't know it yet, but this wasn't about values. It was about conditioning me to accept the loss before I even realized how much I was about to give up. The day it stopped being theoretical was the day my dad asked me to come with him, to take care of something quick. He said it casually, like we were running errands. I didn't even think to ask questions. We sat in a quiet office that smelled like toner and stale air. Beige walls. A desk too clean to feel human. My mom arrived a few minutes later with a folder tucked under her arm, smiling too tightly. My sister wasn't there. That should have been my first clue. This is just to formalize things, my mom said, sliding the papers toward me. So everything's clear. I skimmed at first, not fully understanding the language. Percentages. Allocations. Amendments. Then I saw it, my name, reduced to a fraction of what it had been before. Not delayed. Not paused. Reassigned. I looked up. This says it's permanent. There was a pause. Not shock. Not confusion. Just silence. My dad cleared his throat. Well, yes. For now. For now. I repeated. My voice sounded far away, like it didn't belong to me. There's no clause to change it back. My mom sighed, like I was being difficult. We can't keep living in hypotheticals, she said. This is what makes the most sense. That was the midpoint. The exact moment the floor dropped out from under me. This wasn't an emergency anymore. It wasn't a short-term sacrifice. It was a decision they'd already committed to, one they were now asking me to legitimize with my signature. I felt cornered. If I refused, I was the selfish son abandoning his struggling sister. If I agreed, I erased years of planning with a pen stroke. My hands shook as I held the pen. No one rushed me, but no one offered reassurance either. The expectation hung thick in the room. Do the right thing, my mom said softly. So I signed. The sound of the pen scratching paper felt louder than it should have been. Final. Heavy. As we left the office, my dad clapped me on the back. You'll bounce back, he said. You always do. I walked out knowing something irreversible had just happened, and that everyone but me had been prepared for it. After I signed those papers, nothing exploded. There was no fallout, no awkward silence at dinner, no dramatic shift in how my parents treated me. And somehow, that was worse. Life just continued. As if I hadn't quietly agreed to lose something that had shaped every decision I'd made for years. They acted relieved. Lighter. Like a problem had been solved. My mom started planning things again, holidays, small renovations, little comforts for my sister. My dad joked more. He seemed proud of how smoothly everything had gone. Every now and then, he'd throw in a comment like, "We really appreciate you stepping up," and that was supposed to be enough. My sister barely mentioned it. She talked about feeling safer now, less anxious about her future. I noticed how she stood a little straighter, laughed more freely. None of that joy was directed at me. It was just, funded by my silence. Inside, though, something was breaking down slowly. Not anger, not yet, but exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones. I started replaying every moment I'd swallowed my needs growing up, every time I'd been told I was fine, while someone else was protected. I tried once more to explain how unsettled I felt. We were in the kitchen, the hum of the fridge filling the pauses. "I just need to know you understand what this cost me," I said. My mom didn't look up from the sink. "We've already talked about this," she replied. "Don't reopen it." That's when it hit me. My loyalty was expected, not valued. It was a resource, useful until depleted, then quietly ignored. I stopped sharing things with them after that. Not out of spite, but because it felt pointless. My plans, my worries, my stress, they all stayed in my head now. I smiled. I nodded. I showed up. But something fundamental had shifted. I no longer felt like part of a family. I felt like an employee who'd agreed to unfair terms and was now expected to be grateful for the opportunity. At night, lying awake, I wondered when exactly I'd crossed the line from son to solution. And why everyone else seemed so comfortable on the other side of it. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't argue. I just started pulling away, piece by piece, without realizing yet that this quiet detachment was the beginning of the end. Rock bottom didn't look dramatic. There was no screaming match or slammed doors. It looked like me sitting alone in my apartment, staring at my bank app, realizing I was one unexpected expense away from being screwed. Work had slowed down. Hours got cut. The safety net I'd always assumed I had was gone, and I felt it immediately. Rent was due, my car needed repairs, and the anxiety I'd managed to keep buried finally surfaced all at once. My chest felt tight all the time, like I was constantly bracing for bad news. I waited longer than I should have before reaching out. I hated the idea of asking for help. But I told myself this was different. This wasn't entitlement. This was survival. When I finally called my parents, my voice shook in a way I didn't recognize. I explained the situation carefully, downplaying it, like I always did. I asked for a small loan. Not a handout. Something temporary. There was a pause on the other end of the line. My dad spoke first. "You need to be more responsible," he said. "We can't just fix things for you." I felt heat rush to my face. "I just need a little help to get through the month." My mom sighed. "Your sister has a lot going on right now," she said. "We can't stretch ourselves too thin." That was it. That sentence snapped something in me. I thought about everything I'd given up. The future I'd signed away so she could feel stable. The years I'd been told I was strong enough to handle less. And here I was, being told to figure it out. I hung up and sat there in silence, the hum of traffic outside my window sounding distant and unreal. I felt stupid. Naive. Disposable. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, realizing that if I disappeared tomorrow, the only thing my family would miss was what I used to provide. I cried harder than I ever had, not because of the money, but because the truth finally landed. I wasn't family to them. I was a backup plan they no longer needed. After that call, something in me went completely still. Not numb, clear. Like all the noise I'd been living with finally shut off, leaving one undeniable truth behind: I couldn't keep doing this to myself. So I didn't announce anything. I didn't confront them or demand explanations. I just stopped. I stopped calling first. Stopped checking in. Stopped rearranging my schedule to show up whenever they needed me. When my mom texted, "We haven't heard from you in a while," I replied hours later instead of immediately. Short answers. Polite. Empty. At family gatherings, I started declining. At first I blamed work. Then I didn't explain at all. The silence felt uncomfortable, but also strangely relieving, like loosening a muscle I'd been clenching my whole life. I redirected my energy into survival. I picked up extra shifts. Cut expenses. Sold things I didn't need. It wasn't easy, but every small step I took on my own felt more honest than any help I'd ever accepted from them. They didn't notice at first. Or maybe they did and assumed I'd come back like I always had. My dad left a voicemail one night, cheerful and confused. "Hey, where have you been hiding? Don't be a stranger." I listened to it twice and didn't respond. The space I created gave me room to think. To replay moments I'd normalized. To recognize how often love had been offered with strings attached. For the first time, I wasn't asking myself how to be good enough for them. I was asking why I'd ever believed I had to be. Weeks passed. Then months. The distance grew, and with it, a sense of control I'd never felt before. Not power, peace. I didn't realize how much of the family's balance depended on me staying in my place. On being available. Predictable. Compliant. My absence wasn't dramatic, but it was disruptive. And slowly, the messages changed. The confusion sharpened. The warmth cooled. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about what my silence meant, and what they were losing by not having access to me anymore. It didn't take long for the cracks to show once I stayed gone. At first, the messages were casual. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you. Then they started stacking, missed calls, longer texts, a tone I wasn't used to hearing from them. Confusion turned into irritation, and irritation slowly morphed into something sharper. My mom left a voicemail one afternoon, her voice tight. "We don't understand why you're acting like this," she said. "If we did something to upset you, you should talk to us like an adult." The irony almost made me laugh. I heard through extended family that things weren't as smooth at home anymore. My sister was struggling again, financially, emotionally, always something. The support she'd been getting wasn't stretching as far without my quiet contributions filling in the gaps. Stress was creeping back into my parents' voices, even through secondhand stories. My dad finally called me directly. "No small talk this time. You can't just disappear," he said. "This family relies on each other." I felt that old reflex kick in, the urge to explain myself, to soften the truth. But I didn't. "I'm taking care of myself," I replied. For once. There was silence on the line. Then frustration. "So you're punishing us now?" That's when I realized how they saw it. Not as boundaries. Not as consequences. As defiance. They started rewriting the narrative. I was being distant. Ungrateful. Influenced by outside ideas. My mom hinted that I was breaking her heart. My dad warned me not to burn bridges. What scared them wasn't that I was hurting. It was that they couldn't reach me anymore. Couldn't steer me back into the role I'd played so well. I noticed how every message circled back to what they needed: peace, stability, cooperation. No one asked how I was surviving on my own. No one apologized. The power shift was subtle but undeniable. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to them. They were reacting to me. And the more I stayed silent, the more frantic they became, like a system unraveling without the peace that had quietly held it together for years. I could feel something building. They weren't done yet. And neither was I. The confrontation happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind that used to mean family lunches and forced smiles. My mom asked if we could just talk, and for the first time, I agreed, on my terms. I met them at their house, standing in the doorway like a guest instead of a son. The air felt heavy the moment I walked in. My sister was in her room. Of course. My dad didn't waste time. "You've been distant," he said, arms crossed. "This isn't how family behaves." Something about the way he said it, so certain, so accusatory, made me unusually calm. "I didn't disappear," I said evenly. I stepped back. My mom shook her head, already emotional. "We don't understand why you're doing this to us after everything we've done for you." That was my opening. I laid it out slowly. Not angrily. Not defensively. I talked about the promises I'd built my life around. The inheritance I'd been asked to give up, temporarily, that turned out to be permanent. The way my needs were always framed as optional while my sisters were urgent. They interrupted at first, correcting details, softening language, insisting they never meant to hurt me. I let them talk themselves out. Then I said, "Intent doesn't erase impact." That stopped them. I explained what it felt like to realize I was valued only when I was useful. How asking for help once and being denied shattered whatever loyalty I had left. How stepping away wasn't punishment, it was self-respect. My dad's voice dropped. So what, you're cutting us off? I looked at him and said the truth. I'm done sacrificing my future to keep this family comfortable. My mom cried. My dad looked stunned. Neither apologized. I stood up, heart pounding but steady. I love you, I said. But I won't be part of this dynamic anymore. As I walked out, I expected guilt to hit me. Panic. Regret. Instead, I felt something unfamiliar settle in. Relief. And behind me, I could feel it, the realization they were finally losing control, and there was nothing they could say to pull it back. After that day, everything changed, and nothing did. I didn't block them. I didn't make dramatic announcements. I just stayed gone. And without me there to absorb the pressure, the family dynamic started bending in ways I'd never been allowed to see before. The calls didn't stop, but the tone shifted again. Less authority. More desperation. My mom would leave long voicemails, her voice trembling as she talked about how stressed everyone was, how hard things had become. She'd reminisce about when I was younger, when I was so close to the family, like nostalgia might guilt me back into position. My dad tried a different approach. Practical. Blunt. Your sister's not doing well, he said during one call. We could really use your help right now. Not miss you. Not we're sorry. We need you. That's when it fully clicked. Without me quietly stabilizing things, the cracks were impossible to ignore. My sister's dependence didn't magically disappear when resources got tight, it intensified. My parents were exhausted, stretched thin, frustrated in ways they'd never allowed themselves to be before. And for the first time in my life, none of that was my problem. I watched it from a distance, feeling a strange mix of sadness and clarity. This was the cost of the choices they'd made. A system built on imbalance doesn't collapse loudly, it just stops functioning when the invisible support is removed. They tried everything. Guilt. Anger. Blame. My mom accused me of abandoning the family. My dad warned me that I'd regret this one day. But something had shifted too deeply to undo. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt in the same way. I felt detached, like someone watching a story they used to live in, now finally reading it from the outside. The peace I'd found wasn't loud or triumphant. It was quiet. Steady. Earned. Still, late at night, I wondered if this was the end, or just the calm before one final attempt to pull me back in. Because families like mine don't give up control easily. And I could feel one last moment coming. The final shift didn't come from another argument or message. It came one night when I realized I'd gone an entire day without thinking about them, and felt lighter because of it. I was sitting alone in my apartment, the windows open, city noise drifting in, and for once my thoughts weren't crowded with guilt or second-guessing. My life wasn't perfect. Money was still tight. My future was still uncertain. But every choice I was making was finally mine. My mom called the next day. I let it go to voicemail. In the message, her voice was softer than it had ever been. Tired. We don't recognize you anymore, she said. I don't know where we went wrong. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Because the truth was, I finally recognized myself. I wasn't the strong one anymore. I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the kid who learned to disappear so others could be comfortable. Walking away didn't make me heartless. It made me honest. I didn't get the inheritance. I didn't get an apology. I didn't get the family I thought I had earned through sacrifice. What I got was autonomy. I rebuilt slowly. Carefully. Without their voices in my head telling me what I owed or who needed me more. I learned that love without choice isn't love, it's obligation. And obligation will drain you dry if you let it. Sometimes I still feel a flicker of grief. You don't unlearn a lifetime of conditioning overnight. But it no longer controls me. They lost their hold over me the moment I stopped trying to be understood by people who benefited from misunderstanding me. I didn't win by revenge. I didn't win by confrontation. I won by leaving the game entirely. And the most ironic part? The moment I chose myself was the moment their power over me shattered, for good.